Why are you actually? Mark Waid, he's had 2 books, and one of them kicks ass. He's a douchebag? Yes, he's a douchebag. People are allowed to be douchebags. Supposedly John Byrne's the biggest douchebag in the world. Give me all the John Byrne I can get. I could care less.
I mean, that's fair.
X-Men decided they were going to go away from their A-list heroes and all that kind of stuff. We were going to get Storm and Dazzler and every other character out there other than their mainstream heroes. We weren't going to be getting Cable or any of these heavy hitters, Doc. And now we're back to events and all the A-listers because apparently none of this stuff is working out. And I would imagine the orders are all absolutely terrible, or they wouldn't have announced 20 freaking X-Men titles already.
It's very clearly desperation to try to get some sort of fan interest in the X books right now because it doesn't exist.
Absolutely. And we're going to get our first event. And I will say, I'm excited about what this actually implies. Marvel has revealed a new Raid on Graymalkin crossover event with the Raid on Graymalkin story pitting X-Men against X-Man in a fight for the dream of Professor Charles Xavier. The 4-part crossover will begin in X-Men 8 before continuing in Uncanny X-Men 7, X-Men 9, and concluding in Uncanny X-Men number 8. The story kicks off in December when the X-Men make a move on Graymalkin Prison in order to free their leader. As the raid continues, team leaders Cyclops and Rogue will find themselves at war over Charles Xavier's future. And the thing I find exciting about this is it's not a line-wide event. It's not 25 issues. It's 4-issue crossover. And I think that is a great place to start. And I will be reading this for certain.
It was very, very successful, this kind of format where it was just 4 issues or 6 issues of crossover between 2 main titles before everything went back to normal. That is very, very classic X-over. Going back to that, honestly, it's refreshing. It's them seeing, hey, by the way, all those things that worked in the past, sales-wise, marketing-wise, why don't we just do more of those things? Because while people might have grumbled a little bit, it didn't result in people just saying, fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. I wish they gave this a little bit more time to breathe. Like maybe one of the X-Men teams went into Graymalkin, maybe freed somebody, but they lost 2 people along the way and they realized Graymalkin is this really big threat and they have to get together. But maybe once they get there, then they're kind of at odds with each other and really build it up as something that is almost impenetrable. But I like the format there. I'll definitely be in for this one.
There's no real buildup of Graymalkin and having it as a prison and using it as the base of operations for the new kind of nemesis of the X-Men. You didn't have the opportunity to really build that up and build the stakes so that it mattered. It seems like you're already wiping the slate clean. I like your idea of having one team going in and then them needing basically backup. There needs to be a justification for why all of these very kind of 2 different approaches decide to team up and both go at the same time to rescue Xavier. Also, considering that Xavier was a straight up villain at the end of the Krakoan era, why they feel compelled to rescue him.
He did kill all those people on that U.S. Space Force ship. He was enormous. He murdered every single one of them.
But there's not really been any exploration or reflection from the X-Men on, hey, our founder and mentor and leader has basically gone full bad and not like just Onslaught infected by Magneto bad. This time they're like, yeah, even though you just went full on murdering psychopath, we're totally going to try to break you out of the jail that you are rightfully in.
But I do like the format and I'm excited about that. So we got our big first crossover. I knew we would get this within the first year. I think they are pushing this a little bit too fast. They should have built it up as a bigger threat, something bigger to overcome in the end. But I'll take it because it is a sign of things improving, perhaps just with the format and the way that they laying things out. We're also getting Deadpool Wolverine, a new ongoing monthly series featuring the further adventures of these 2 bloodthirsty anti-heroes. The series reunites X-Force writer Ben Percy and artist Josh Becerra as the 2 characters are once again brought together to deal with returning X-Men villain. A new revelation about their shared history. Expect no shortage of blood and gore in this series. Deadpool Wolverine is being billed by Marvel as a never-ending action movie. The book will feature an overarching mystery involving an old mission neither Wade nor Logan seem to remember. And I like Ben Percy to a degree, but this does scream mystery box storytelling, which is the biggest deficiency in his writing style.
In my opinion, he had the most promise of any of the writers in the Krakoan era, never delivered on that promise. I have never been particularly impressed by his work. I don't think he's bad by any stretch. There are much, much, much worse and were much worse writers in the X office than him. I think this is just kind of a acceptance that, hey, maybe Ben Percy isn't quite ready for prime time. So we're putting him back on a pseudo ongoing. We're putting him on the one thing that he was marginally successful at and was sort of able to sell comics doing.
You got Deadpool, Wolverine, the movie. It was very, very successful. I'm not surprised we're getting more Deadpool and Wolverine. It is at least advertised as an ongoing series, and they are at least putting some A-list characters together. This is much better than the idea behind, even like X-Force, which is kind of weird with no A-listers there. You've got no A-listers on NYX, no one on really exceptional X-Men. There's a lot of just kind of flaccid teams out there. At least you've got some star power on this book, which I do think will give it at least a marginal sense of longevity in comparison to the rest of the line.
All the rest of the X books at this point, I like your terminology for it, flaccid. They are weak without staying power, let's just say. And this is probably the one book that would have the best possibility of finding some long-term success. Honestly, I kind of hope it happens. The Hickman Wolverine book doesn't matter because it's not in our continuity. The Saladin Ahmed book, it's very, very, very middling at this point. It's
also stuck in between time periods because apparently it comes out before Uncanny X-Men 1 or X-Men #1. So where can you really go with it? He's got to get down to New Orleans eventually.
This already has an expiration date. Wolverine in Gail Simone's book is all right, but he's not really all that entertaining. He's the draw character. But now you got a fourth fucking Wolverine-centric book? You're getting as bad as DC over here with Batman stuff. The only thing that seems to be moving units are things that have Wolverine in it in the X office at the moment. I'm all down for a Wolverine and Deadpool team-up book. Hopefully, it kind of feels like the Cable and Deadpool book that Fabian Nicieza and Mark Brooks, and then I think Riley Brown and somebody else. It was an exceptional title. It was a great kind of second tier X title at the time. This has the possibility of being that, but I don't know how much it can impact the current From the Ashes era, especially if it's already starting off with its first story being exploring some mission that they were both on during their Weapon X time.
Now, they say they're going to introduce a long-lost villain in Marvel Comics in the first issue. I'm imagining that doesn't mean it's like a new character that they forgot, that it's a character that's existed that they haven't used in a while. Is there a Wolverine or Deadpool villain out there that you think would be choice for this that people have been looking for?
We haven't seen Strife in a while, and he has at least some degree of history with Deadpool. Not so much with Wolverine, but that might be a good choice. I mean, if we're being perfectly honest, there's a lot of X-villains we haven't seen in a while because we've spent a lot of time in the past couple of years without any X-villains because they all got turned into heroes.
But we do got more, Doc. Another character we were told we wouldn't get to see. A 5-issue limited series by writer David Pepos is coming called Cable, Love, and Chrome. He's been a soldier and X-Men protector of the time stream, but even from his earliest days, the mutant known as Cable has been living on borrowed time, waging a lonely war against the ravages of the techno-organic virus. Yet when a high-stakes mission in the future goes catastrophically awry, Cable is left stranded in the dystopian city of Salvation Bay and will find himself caught in the midst of a civil war that will change his life forever. So boy, did Tom Brevoort change his tune real quick. Not only are we seeing this character in Time Slide, the preview book, but he's getting his own miniseries with David Pepos with a really terrible subtitle.
We heard just a couple of weeks ago, you're not going to see any of the time-traveling mutants for a while. Yeah, that did not fucking last at all. Now, granted, I'm not really complaining. Cable's a top 10 character for me.
These are 3 of your top 5. You got Deadpool, Wolverine, and Cable.
I do. I should be phenomenally happy by this. I'm not, because David Pepos is on it, and honestly, fuck
Space
that
Ghost
dude.
Is amazing. Space Ghost is great.
I've heard great things about his Space Ghost, but if he's able to write one competent thing, that's spectacular. That does not make him a competent writer. Up until this point, I have never seen an ounce of anything approaching competence out of him.
But you only read the 1 issue of freaking Punisher.
I don't care.
That was a dead concept before. That's not his fault. That's Marvel Comics' fault.
There's been a lot of terrible ideas pitched to competent creators in the past, things that they've been asked to do or forced to do on books that they actually were able to execute, while it might not have been a perfect story, a competent way. David Pepos has shown that he can't do that.
But he's done more issues of Space Ghost now than he did of that stupid Punisher thing, and they're all good. So he's done more good than he has bad.
All that's telling me is that when he wants to be okay, he can.
Maybe he likes Cable.
Maybe he does, and maybe he doesn't.
Why are you Mark Waid? He's had 2 books, and one of them kicks ass. Is he a douchebag? Yes, he's a douchebag. People are allowed to be douchebags. Supposedly John Byrne's the biggest douchebag in the world. Give me all the John Byrne I can get. I could care less.
I mean, that's fair. My point.
He's not going full Mark Waid on anybody.
No, and except for maybe Perch.
Everybody hates Perch.
I love Perch. I'm just more amused by the fact that Tom Brevoort's already going against his own editorial edict just a couple of months in because of how poorly everything else is doing. That's where I get my joy. I get my joy in watching Tom Brevoort fail.
Oh, yeah, and that's why we're getting Deadpool Wolverine. That's why we're getting Cable. I imagine the event had already been planned out to be like a smaller, more contained crossover, and I do give him enormous thumbs up for that. I love the formatting of that. A return to real X crossovers is the way to do it, and also a return to form with actually having the A-list heroes to be the ones on the solo books and the little team-up books, rather than trying to throw every heroine that's never worked in an ongoing or a miniseries at the wall at the exact same time and being like, I can't believe this didn't work. Obviously, they've realized they've made some enormous mistakes, are about facing and going in a different direction, which should only be good because it has been so terrible thus far.
They do about faces in order to gain back a little bit of cred of whatever, just so they can turn around and try to do the exact same thing again. Like right when you're about to leave, they do something to win the reader back, and then they immediately go back to doing the same terrible, ill-conceived ideas that didn't work the first time after you came back. It's Lucy in the fucking football.
Sometimes I regret not reading comic books my entire life like you, until moments like this, and I realize that you've been in this abusive relationship for over 35 years. And I'm glad I didn't have to do that.
I agreed. I mean, I'm happy that you didn't have to deal with that either. And you know what? I'd love to not be as cynical as I am, but Marvel has spent the better part of the past decade forcing additional cynicism out of me at every possible opportunity, because they'll recognize, act like they're making a change, that we are all in an abusive relationship with Marvel Comics. We're the battered wife, just constantly getting told, I promise I'll change and I won't do it again. And then immediately after we let our guard down, we get punched in the face again.
If I don't have a thumbnail with Tom Brevoort with his pork pie hat on and a wife beater, pointing at Doc, letting him know, I've changed, baby.
Exactly. And I don't mean to make light of it, but at the same time, that's exactly how it feels. It's every narcissistic douchebag ex that every woman complains about. We're the women that are complaining about it. Oh, I guarantee he's going to change this time. And then they
must
never
really love me.
Yeah,
Deadpool
he
Wolverine.
must really love me to give me the thing that I want. And then we'll get Deadpool and Wolverine, we'll get Cable, but when we get Deadpool and Wolverine, I don't know how they're going to screw us on that one yet. They gave us Cable, but we're getting David Pepos with it. We're getting an escape from the Krakoan era, but it's led by Jed McKay, Gail Simone, and Eve Ewing. We're getting a bunch of Solo X books. They're all chicks that don't sell by creators that don't sell. You know, there's always a poison pill attached to every single thing that Marvel's doing these days. I'm just trying to figure out what the poison pill is half the time before I, swallow it hook, line, and sinker to see whether or not I'm inoculated from that particular poison pill. So as much as I want to get hyped, I get it. David Pepos is doing this great Space Ghost book. That's fucking awesome. He did a terrible Punisher book. Maybe he can't work within the constraints of editorial. Maybe he will only do good work whenever he really, really cares about a character. And then we got to cross our fingers that Cable's a character that he really, really cares about. The premise behind it, I feel like I've read like 5 other times, exploring the techno-organic virus, and that was
being stuck in time.
Yeah, being unstuck in time. That was the Dwayne Swizzle Sticks and Ariel Olvetti Cable with Baby Hope story. I've seen a lot of these things before. It feels like going back to the well again on Cable. But at the same time, fine, cool. Hey, at least I'm getting a Cable book.
You thought you weren't going to be getting one because Tom Brevoort said absolutely no bueno on that. But it turns out he's about facing because things are not going well. They're going back to their heavy hitters. They're teaming up Deadpool and Wolverine. We're getting a Cable book. We're getting an event, but it's not going to be 25 issues. And I think they're trying to recapture the magic that they had 30 years ago. Will they be able to do that? I have severe doubts about that. But if you would like this entire conversation that went almost 30 minutes, because Doc was excited about his favorite characters and had to talk about this, you do need to go over to Think Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. The doc is right here, Doc Unfiltered, and you get the fully unedited version of this conversation as well as our fully unedited Dazzler #1 review that you do not want to miss out on.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see you all there.